So lucky to have Susan here.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give you a quick history of broads. There's a more extensive history online on our website. And there's also a document to Sally and Julie. I can point that out to you that gives a little bit more history, and which is what I drew from, plus some of my institutional knowledge as well. Okay, on to the next slide. So, we were founded in 1989 to mark the 25th anniversary of the Wilderness Act. And this is a photograph of our founders. This was actually in a magazine. I don't remember which magazine it was, if it was ARP or Time. It was one of those bigger magazines that featured a story about Great Old Broads for Wilderness. And from left to right, we have Ginger Harmon, then Susan Touche, who was the instigator. I'll tell you a little bit more about her. And then Edie Pierpont. I don't know a lot about Edie, but she was instrumental as well. And Frandy Johnson is next. And then Dottie Fox. And all of these women were hardcore hikers, advocates, adventurers, writers, really talented women. Um, Still with us is Ginger Harmon, and I believe Frandy Johnson is also still with us. They're both getting up there in age. We lost Susan, I think it was 2016, when she passed away. So next slide, please. A little bit about Susan Touche. A lot of people mispronounce her last name. For one thing, it's Touche, obviously, not Tixier. But that's good to know when you're talking to some of your members. She was a hardcore environmental activist. She was brilliant. She was visionary. She was driven, persuasive, charismatic, and a little bit crazy. I got to tell you that. And that's what makes people so talented when it comes to that entrepreneurial spirit, in starting the organization. She was highly educated. She had a law degree and two master's degrees, and was an amazing person. Um, Kind of wild too. She really brought a wildness to the organization. Next slide. Okay. Oops, wait. There we go. So, what got the organization started? This group of women hung out together, they hiked together, they advocated together. And about that time, they were working to protect the Escalante region, some of Red Rock country. And Orrin Hatch, who was a senator at the time, was highly opposed to it, and said, if no, for no other reason, we need roads for the aged and infirmed. And he kind of pissed them off, so they thought, you know what, we're going to fight this. And even though we're older women, we might not be as strong as we used to be, but using us as an excuse to put roads through wilderness is just unacceptable. And so that kind of inspired them to organize, to create the organization. Next slide, please. So what they realized, through this experience is the voice that was missing from the conservation community, and that was the voice of the older women. Although the conservation community is still, there's a lot of male domination in the community. It was much different back then. There were very few women that were out speaking out on behalf of conservation. Yeah, there were a few, but not as many. And they talked about, amongst themselves about how important it was for the older woman because of her experience. She's not afraid to speak out. She's passionate about those things. And a lot of these women, and like you, maybe, and many of our members, the children have left the nest and they're looking for something to fuel their passion. And that was what they felt the world needed, was that mother voice to Mother Nature. So the group committed themselves to advocacy to protect wilderness and wild places for future generations. They were very wilderness focused. Next. So how did the name come about? A lot of people ask that question, and the group knew what they wanted to do. They had their mission in place. They weren't quite sure what to call the organization. And one day they were out hiking and came back from a hike and stopped into a little cafe and had lunch. And while they were there, some other older women came in, all dusty and, from being on the trail and sweaty and everything. And they stopped and talked and compared notes about their hike and, the area and how much they loved the Red Rock country. And after they spoke and this other group of women left, someone turned to one another in the group and said, "What a bunch of great old broads." And that's how the name was born. And for me, coming from a marketing perspective, that was pure genius because everyone remembers that name. Now, some people might find it a little offensive. Some people really love it because they've taken back broads and made it a power word. But to me, it was really a stroke of genius. Next slide, please. So there were key milestones throughout the organization. From 1989 to 2001, Susan Tichet led the organization. Those were kind of the scrappy wild days. She was amazing at generating publicity and getting attention for the organization and for issues. She would dream up these wild things like there was a one summer they hiked. Well, it may not have been summer, it may have been spring because of heat, but a group of women hiked across Utah to bring attention to protecting public lands in Utah. And one of our members that is still around, Marilyn Reinbold, was part of that hike. So if you ever get a chance to meet her, she's an amazing woman. She got on television shows, she got a lot of media press, and really raised the profile of the organization. But also, like visionary people, she reached a certain point in the development of the organization where it was time to make a transition and formalize some things. When they first founded the organization, membership was buy a t-shirt and you're a member, or tell people you're a member and eventually buy a t-shirt. So there were some things that had to be formalized and some structure that needed to be put into place. And about that time is when Susan Tichet stepped down. So there was a short transition period with MB McAfee, who lives in the area here in Colorado. This is when the organization moved from Utah or New Mexico. It might have been both. Susan moved back and forth between Utah and New Mexico. But MB McAfee, who was on the board at the time, took on the executive director role, moved the national office to Colorado, and basically shepherded the Broads through kind of a rough period of time. That's when they were struggling with some financial issues. She went out and beat the bushes and raised some money and then hired Rose Chilcote. And Rose was eventually the associate director for 15 years with Great Old Broads and was instrumental in bringing change to the organization. Next slide, please. Pardon me, my allergies are bothering me. So my eyes are watering, everything's watering. So next, Ronnie Egan came on board and teamed up with Rose. She and Rose were a dynamic team, and they formalized broadwalks and broadworks. Up until that point, broadwalks were pretty scrappy. It was like everyone was on their own. They were rough camping, dispersed camping, and it was cook your own meals, and we're going to hike 30 miles while we're here. I mean, they were really hardcore. But Rose had ideas based on her upbringing on how to organize broadwalks so that they were more educational and more accessible to a broader audience. No pun intended. They also worked on establishing broadworks, which are primarily handled by broadbands right now. That might be something that the national office will come back to. And then they went through a period of organizational growth. A really important milestone there that I didn't include in my notes there is in 2009, they established broadbands. And that was a vision of Susan Touché's from the very beginning, but it took a few years, obviously, to bring that vision to fruition. And it was through Rose and Ronnie that the broadband concept was established because they knew that we could have achieved more as an organization through organized chapters that dealt with regional issues. So that was a really big milestone to establish that in 2009. And then in 2013 to 2023, Shelley Silbert took the helm. That was a period of strong broadband program growth. That was with Lauren Baratich, working with Shelley to grow broadbands. And she also brought a lot of like formalization and improvements to the program and to WALTS. She really formalized WALTS. And there was also a period of organizational growth and systems improvement overall. Then in 2023 and 2024, we went through another transitional period. We had Sarah Husby as the executive director. Sarah initiated some more formalization with broadband chapters. She also oversaw the change of the logo because over time, the logo had become, let's say, inappropriate. It was created in the spirit of admiration for Native Americans, but times change, and it got to the point where Broads was being confused as perhaps a Native American organization. And Shelley Silbert had initiated that process. Sarah helped carry it out, where the logo was then updated to be more representative generally of the work that Broads does, rather than the overtones of Native American imagery that it had in the past. So that was a pretty important change that occurred during that period of time. So, next slide. Today, we're in a period of transition. I know you all probably will talk about that. Broads is in the process of hiring a new executive director. I've been a part of looking at some of the applications, and I'll tell you, there is a wealth of talent out there, and it's an exciting time for Broads. I think that every period of transition has been important to the organization. It's kind of like trial by fire. You come out stronger and a better organization with each transition. Today, and you might have to correct me on the numbers, Julie, but there are more than 40 chapters, and I'm not sure how many leaders there are these days, and in at least 19 states, I believe. Broads has become an organization that has a reputation for being the boots on the ground and being an effective advocacy organization for public lands. And it's really amazing when you think about how far the organization has come in the last 36 years. So that's my spiel. Any questions?
Yeah, we have time for questions. If anybody, Susan, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Had anyone heard that history before that's been with Broads for a while? Okay.
I think it's interesting about the regional issues that because, you know, the West was settled later, there's a lot more public land here in the West. And obviously our representation here is Colorado and West, you know, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, basically. You know, and huge population centers and what levers of power are kind of in the East. So I hope again that we can advocate for people in the East as well to be part of, you know, moving things forward.
I'm with you. East Coast. We're gonna do it.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I
Well,
won- I wondered the same thing. Oh, and so I'm sorry, Susan. I was just going to say, if you want to mention who the other, all the 19 states, and just like Laura was mentioning, just sort of the regional, I guess, skeleton of where the power sits in the broad.
Oh, so Heather, that's a great question. We
Mhm.
just sent out the annual report, and we have a map with kind of stars of where the broadbands are. I will say, just generally speaking, on the East Coast right now, we have the Nor'easters who support New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine, and then the Grits broadband, which is based out of Georgia. And then we have the Minnesota Wild Waters broadband, and then most of our broadbands are in the Four Corners region, Pacific Northwest, and we have 4 in California. And then 1 in Alaska. So I'll show you that map. I'll put up the map later. But yeah, we hover around 40. We would love to keep that expanding, get more in the Midwest and East Coast. Something that we'll talk about a lot on the advocacy front, and I hear you all, this is an interesting time we find ourselves in. And when I was in DC at the beginning of May, a lot of people are trying to target those freshman Congress, representatives. And some of them are in states like Pennsylvania. And like, we don't have representation in Pennsylvania. So there's benefits when we have these administrations changes to having representation in different areas, depending on what their representation looks like. So it's a good point.
okay, well,
And
I'm gonna bow out. It was
thanks,
great to see
Susan.
you all. And thank you for taking a leadership role.
Yeah, and we'll
Thanks,
direct them.
Susan.
You said on the website, those 2 history overviews. We'll share
Yeah.
that too. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye.